Hi and welcome to another narration presented by yours truly, Cryptids Roost. Please be so kind as to throat punch the like button and smack the ass of the subscription button as well. And remember to tap that notification bell and then select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. I would like to reach out and say a huge thank you to those of you who have supported Cryptids Roost financially. We pray the good Lord replenishes you abundantly, and to those of you who will later on. We pray the good Lord bless you as you do so. And also a huge thank you to everyone for always supporting the channel with your likes, comments and shares as well. It is all very much appreciated. God bless you all. So grab your coffee, sit back and enjoy the show. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not. In the span of 20 years, I died twice. Part 2. The City of Smiles. This awesome series is written by getyaisha. And if you'd like to read more of their works, the Reddit link to their profile will be below in the description. Of course, there are ways to get out, or you wouldn't be reading this. It's just difficult. While within sticks you can go wherever you want, as long as your feet can carry you there. But to reach anywhere outside the city, you'll need a guide. This isn't about laws or anything like that. If you step outside without a guide, chances are you're going to die. For good. Forget about maps, they won't work where you're going. To start with, there are other places where people spawn here in hell. Towns and cities of many sizes scattered around, each both a little better and somehow even worse than the one before. Every settlement has its own rules and peculiarities, including some, let's say, backdoor exits one can take. There's only a few of them though, and the details about anywhere that you hear through gossip get buried in nonsense. The rumours go from the folks in Naraka having silk up to Tartarus holding a holiday festival where people toss cheese wheels downhill and race after them, and other similar bullshit I'll only believe on the day Satan himself materialises into existence and kisses me lovingly on the forehead. So I'll start simple and focus on talking about the places I've personally been to. We reached the mid-mark, don't stray far. Donovan never spoke much on those trips, but we all increased pace to walk closer to our mountain of a guide. One step for him is two for everyone else, and I tried to not linger at the tail end of the group. It was hard to precise the exact limit from where you can still turn and go back on your own, because it's only after crossing that limit that we start seeing the bones, sometimes whole and sometimes fragments lying around the tunnels as you walk. Sometimes there's nothing left but piles of dust. We call the space between settlements Gehenna. Do not cross Gehenna without a reason, even less alone. It doesn't look like a big deal at first, just a stretch of terrain when no damned is born and barren of life of any kind. But after some point, distance and time start acting in weird ways here. The same path that took a day to cross in a trip may take a month in the next, and a week on the trip back, and you won't notice, or even if you do, you won't care. Your urges will fade before you do. You'll feel less hungry, less thirsty, less tired. When those walking alongside you fall and don't get up, you won't care. When you waste away and your bones start showing through your skin, you won't care. Even when you collapse yourself and your body falls over, you won't care. Gehenna is empty, and it will empty you as well. That's why once you've decided where you want to go, you need a guide to take you there. someone who already knows the routes, who has made the trip before and managed to return, if you intend to return. The city we were headed to at the time laid on the other side of the river. The low tide left a pathway to its entrance shrouded by dense fog and led into narrow, partially obscured crossroads. Walking through it, the black rocky wall looked so familiar at Styx, gradually shifted, becoming smoother and smoother, until we were looking into an obsidian mirror. I lost count of how many times I scared myself silly catching someone following from the corner of my eye, just to realise it was my reflection on the walls peeking through the mist. Though the river has long disappeared, the current's humming and drumming still echoed just as loud. The passage was slow, old and heavy, like breathing water. Ready your tolls. I shifted the satchel I was carrying so the bunch of Yggdrasil bark it held sat in front of my chest instead of at my back. Others in the group did the same, depending on how they were carrying their own loads. Money has no value in hell. Ironic, isn't it? There were no banks to store it, no open stores to buy things from. Some places abided by an honour code or similar, but generally speaking, the vast majority of transactions between people were done through deals and favours, while transactions between settlements were made through exchange of native materials. Styx's main bargain chip is its tree bark, and by getting close to the council, I could tag along the trips to deliver and collect. The distant sound of running water has vanished, a cooling wind taking its place, and buildings slowly started filling my view. A little ways ahead, one can spot a sign of carved wood hung by the entrance of a small hut. "Welcome to Sheol," it read in large letters. The hut itself was nested between the cavern wall, built out of wood and scavenged materials. There was something about it that felt different about the buildings back at Styx or even the others around here. It's just a little rough around the edges, patchworked, newer, made by people who actually lived here instead of just being claimed by them. And that means we've reached the final checkpoint. Donovan has gone past the exchange hut a few times, but I've seen other groups' guides swaying in and out as well. It happened when our acquired merchandise was too big or too heavy for the city's representatives to bring to us on their own, so the guides went in and helped carrying the stuff too. They just said the city is big, and that sounded true enough to believe. But I never have walked past that counter, and neither had anyone else in my group. The bit of Sheol we could see from here was strange for Hell's standards, almost quaint even. The people didn't show much reaction at the sight of 24 strangers skulking about, other than curious looks. They walked the streets and swept porches, their eyes trailing after us, and when we looked back, they smiled and waved. Everything around still looked old, as I've come to expect. Dim lampposts and houses needing a new paint job, but it wasn't falling apart, and everything was clean, not a speck of dust or rust in sight. The paving stones were polished to a degree that's obsessive for something there was no point in maintaining around these parts. Some kind of ivy was growing everywhere, trimmed into hedges and ornate fences, all pale stalks and purple leaves with red tips. The leaves felt thick and crunchy in my grasp. I wondered if they were edible, but Lucas smacked my hands away and pushed me inside the hut before I could take any. A little bell rung when we pushed the door hut open, and the clerk behind the counter greeted us with a trained customer service voice. "Hi, welcome to Sheol's Central Exchange Stop. What will it be today?" "Wood from Styx. Give me anything worth it." He was younger than me, wayfish and a little slouched, with a tooth gap that caught attention when he smiled. Not any different from someone you'd see working part-time at McDonald's. His uniform was a plain t-shirt and pants, but with a good fit and no visible holes. There were neon green streaks in his hair. Must be fresh arrival or newly reset then, spawned from a birthing bulb recently enough for his pre-death dye and haircut to remain. He nodded at Donovan and turned to the rest of us, grinning from ear to ear as he collected the bark we held out. "We could pay higher if you brought in actual branches, you know." I shuddered at the idea, and nobody else seemed to like it either. Yggdrasil trees were smooth at the base. Even on the lower end, the trees got to at least 2 to 3 stories high before any branches started appearing. And that's only mentioning thinning branches, too small to hold up full-size birthing bulbs. We had plenty of bark because it was easy to peel off, and it all regrew by the next day anyway. But there's no way any of us were climbing those trees after branches to give away when we didn't even risk climbing for the little bulbs. That thought made me glance back at the entrance. There had been kids on the street outside. Just a few, but they were there, laughing and playing without a care. But I hadn't seen a single birthing bulb around. People aren't born in hell, not in the sense of a fetus forming in a mother's womb, born as a baby and then growing up. You just pop up from a bulb like a video game's monster spawn and life goes on from there. Of course, it could just be that their birth sites are deeper into the city somewhere, not visible from where we are. "I'll fetch your share in a bit. Hold on tight." The clerk looked like an overgrown ant running all over the hut, retrieving stuff from drawers and shelves and spreading them on the counter. Woven baskets made from some sort of fibre, charcoal sticks, long sheets of metal, thin sheets of glass, bundles of clay pots with questionable oils and waxes, a thin roll of something that might be a very rudimentary attempt at paper, rough little figurines sculpted in either bone, clay or stone. I could also see polished crafted items, bottles and vials, cutlery, blades of varied sizes and shapes meant for surgical use gleamed from their displays by the light of our torches. There was a fucking obsidian spear mounted to the back wall, but the clerk made no move towards those, not even acknowledge they existed while we waited for him to assemble our things to take. Yggdrasil bark wasn't worth enough for those, or at least not in the amount we brought. "Okay, so here's some options you can choose." "We'll take it." "For this much raw wood, you can take 2 alloy sheets, or the glass, or the baskets and a couple of trinkets. Maybe 1 alloy sheet, and the glass if I'm feeling really nice. Not everything, unless you want to add more from your side." "We can think of it. What would you take?" "A group who passed by before cashed in a favour and left their garbage here for us to deal with. If you dump it off on your way back instead, we can make this work." "Show me." The clerk asked us to wait a moment while he scampered into the back room, and later returned bringing along an older couple. Their eyes were unfocused, wide and darting everywhere, while the clerk tugged at the rope around their necks and forced them to follow. They were both nude, with splotchy limbs and bloated bellies, foaming at the mouth, growling like animals while the clerk tied the rope somewhere behind the counter, so that Donovan could take a closer peek. I don't know what exactly is wrong with them, but I'm not getting close. "Where the shit's from?" "Malva. Both got here yesterday." Malva has woven rope. I stored the info in my head for later use. Unless you live under a rock, you must have heard about at least some of Hell's larger settlements. Dis, Sheol, Styx, Tartarus, etc. Names that pop up in varied religions and myths on the mortal plane. But Malva was a little thing. barely a hamlet nested at the shadow of Elysium. You don't hear much about them, even here. The team that brought them found them like this, chewing on torn birthing bulb tissue, the clerk continued. Guess they didn't want to risk it in case they were still loony after the next reset. Bulb tissue isn't edible. It grows on our trees, but it's more like a fungus than a fruit. After we rip it apart to be born, the pieces regrow, expanding and filling up with fluid within a couple of weeks. Even if they're inside someone's stomach, the pain must be maddening. I was warned beforehand though, so I never went through it myself. Anyway, the crazed pair was apparently normal before that incident, but Malva's peeps wanted the two gone from their place just in case. I couldn't blame them for not risking it. All that was stopping those two from biting us right then was a makeshift gag fashioned out of purplish vine loops. Probably made by someone from Sheol who didn't want to get bitten. Judging by the blisters forming on their mouths, the vines are not edible either. What a shame. So, deal? Deal. Donovan took on the deranged duo, and along with them we got their ropes, a window's worth of glass and 4 sheets of metal. We could skip by this and leave the crazies there, and the rest would go back home with us. I was daydreaming of cashing in one of my favours with the council to nab the glass for myself when I noticed some movement from the corner of my eyes, and I elbowed Lucas on the way out. He frowned, annoyed, until I pointed at a newbie carrier of ours, trying to tiptoe past the clerk, whose smile had turned a little wider. Then Lucas's frown became a grimace, and he grabbed the dumbass carrier by the arm. I took the other arm and we dragged him outside. Yeah, that glass was already mine. Don't even try. Come on! That's one little bitch we could come back with arms full of. It's more for your sake than theirs, believe me, Lucas groaned. I'm not super fond of Lucas, but I honestly agreed with him on this. A couple of trips ago, the clerk behind the counter at the time went away for a piss break, and another smartass from our group decided to sneak through the hut's back door and explore the city. It sounded tempting at the time to see what Sheol really looked like, and what we could sneak back with. Sheol, beautiful Sheol, with its neat gardens and clean streets full of laughter. That same laughter did not stop when our man's screams started, not for the full minute it lasted, nor when his voice faded into silence. I probably don't need to mention that he didn't come back right, but no one has sneaked past the checkpoint hut ever since. I glanced back up at the Sheol clerk with his permanent grin and his glassy, unblinking eyes. Then I recalled the denizens' eyes trailing after me with the same smiles on their faces, and I didn't feel like sticking around for any longer than I strictly needed to. On to our next destination, the city of Dis. Don't forget, if you enjoyed that story, be sure to pop over to the author's Reddit profile and drop them a line, or even give them a glowing review. I'm sure they really would appreciate it. The link to their Reddit profile will be below in the description. Please be so kind as to throat punch the like button and smack the ass of the subscription button as well. And remember to tap the notification bell and then select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. Oh, and don't forget to share the video far and wide. This will all help with YouTube's algorithm and will help to promote this channel more. And don't forget to check out the merch store. The link will be in the description and also in the video thumbnail. And if you would like an honourable mention, send in a snapshot of yourself with your purchase and I'll feature it in one of the videos. I now have my very own subreddit community where you can submit any stories you've written. You can submit your stories or encounters either there or send them to cryptidsroost@gmail.com. If you wish to remain anonymous, that's fine with me. All the links are below. I also have a Facebook group, Twitter, Reddit, and you'll also find me on Discord. If you would like to support this channel and help make it grow, my PayPal is paypal.me/cryptidsroost. Again, that will also be below. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not.